With KAZU, I'm Jeremiah Edding. CalFresh, EBT, food stamps, they're all names for the same federally funded Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP. In California, we call SNAP CalFresh. When H.R. 1, the Big Beautiful Bill Act, passed over a year ago on July 4th, 2025, it implemented sweeping changes to the program. It created stricter work requirements for those who want to access SNAP, and it excluded groups who have historically benefited altogether. It also passed more costs onto state and local governments. It's the biggest cut in the program's history. In Santa Cruz County, 30,000 people rely on SNAP benefits to make ends meet, and these changes are expected to affect thousands of them.
CalFresh, or SNAP, has always been the first line of defense against food insecurity. In our county, it contributes $77 million, right, of nourishment a year into our local economy and into our stores.
Erica Padilla Chavez is the CEO of Second Harvest, Santa Cruz County's food bank. I wanted to hear her thoughts about how these changes are affecting people in our community and what organizations like Second Harvest are doing to try to make up the difference. I'm Jeremiah Edding. This is Mending the Net, a series from KAZU about how federal cuts are fraying the Santa Cruz County social safety net and how the community is responding. Erica Padilla Chavez, thanks for joining us in the KAZU Green Room.
My pleasure.
So H.R. 1, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, passed almost exactly a year ago on 4th of July last year, 2025. And among its many cuts to the American social safety net, it'll have a huge and long-ranging impact on food security across the nation, including here in the Monterey Bay area. You're the CEO of Second Harvest, which is Santa Cruz County's food bank. So I wanted you to describe about what Second Harvest does and a little bit about what the food bank network does across the nation.
Absolutely. So first, it's an honor to be here, and I'm very proud to be the CEO of the very first food bank in the state of California, second in the nation.
Oh, I didn't know that.
We at our food bank are dedicated essentially to ensuring that we are sourcing food to nourish our hungry neighbors in Santa Cruz County. And we are a county of 270,000 people. In a recent report that we had UC Santa Cruz commissioned, found that 1 out of every 3 people in our county is food insecure, namely attributed to the high cost of living. In our county, we are the most expensive rental market in the United States. And therefore, the amount of resources that it takes to just have basic needs covered, like housing, are well outside of the reach of many people in our county. So what does that mean for our food bank? Our food bank is pre-pandemics was nourishing about 50,000 people per month. Post-pandemic, we stayed at 70,000. And as of the last few months, we are hitting over 80,000 people in our county. So very much well into that 1 out of every 3 people coming to our doors.
Given that there's so many in Santa Cruz County, who are you seeing come in?
Everybody. The face of food insecurity is very diverse. And they span all walks of life, all ages. In our county, we know that we are feeding about 20,000 children. Which is a high percentage of the childhood population in our county. And we also know that households with children under the age of 5 are 3 times more likely to be food insecure. I unfortunately believe that without a shift to federal policy on particularly the CalFresh or SNAP program, food banks, my food bank included, will continue to see pandemic level demands. So at the height of the pandemic, we served about 90,000 people. I'm not far from that number in our county. I have been hearing from my colleagues in other states that they're already exceeding their pandemic levels.
So where do you get all the food?
Great question, and that's probably becoming the most challenging thing for food banks right now. We normally source food 4 different ways. We have depended on a partnership with the U.S. Department of Agriculture to receive USDA food commodities. we're seeing a decrease in those food commodities. That's true of my food bank and across the nation of all food banks. That's one source. The second, of course, is donations from our local food producers. So in Santa Cruz County, we're very lucky to have very strong agricultural production industry. And so a lot of our food comes from our local donors. The third is we rescue food. And so what that means is that we are working with all the retail stores in our county to pick up edible food that is coming off the shelves. So we rescue over 1 million pounds of food that way, and we aim to increase that to 2 million in the coming year.
So not low quality food, but just stuff that doesn't necessarily get purchased.
And then the last way that we're sourcing food, and that by far is the pathway that is increasing the most, is we're purchasing food. So your food banks, when you see a decline in any one of these channels, the way to meet the needs of a community is through purchasing food. And so we're doing a lot more of that this year than ever in the history of the food bank.
And so with all that in mind, how are you funded? Are you a direct recipient of federal money? Is that most of your money, or is it mostly local?
Yeah, I'll say that 4 years ago when I entered as the CEO, I assumed that there was a lot of federal funding associated with the administration of a food bank. And was I mistaken? So for the most part, our food bank is fueled thanks to the support of our community. It is individuals like you and me, foundations, and our corporate partnerships throughout the county that really help sustain our food bank.
So H.R. 1 inflicted the greatest cuts that SNAP has ever experienced in its history. Up to $200 billion over the next 10 years is by some estimates. And so there's a whole list of changes, and that includes how much the federal government pays for things like the administrative costs of managing the program. But I think the most significant are the able-bodied work requirements. There's a range of people who need to meet work requirements, which is working or volunteering 20 hours a week. And they've expanded the people who are required to do that. The county predicts that these changes are going to really impact thousands of people in Santa Cruz County. And I guess just from your standpoint as the other provider of food assistance, what does that mean for you operationally, and what are you hearing from people?
What we're seeing is we're seeing people coming in at higher volumes than normal, wanting to speak to a representative of our team, because we do have trained CalFresh caseworkers in our office. CalFresh is a program that is made available to any and all legal residents of the United States, right? And what we know is true in our region is that we have a lot of head of households that are not necessarily documented citizens, but who have children who were born and raised here. And often these households with children, it's the child that is the qualifier for that program. There's a context in which people are having to make decisions about whether or not this is a program that they should participate in, right? Even though their children are very much still in need of that nourishment.
More people are needing to meet this 20-hour work week requirement. And so they're looking for opportunities to volunteer. And so what is the food bank, how is the food bank kind of absorbing that need?
So what we're trying to do is organize that entire ecosystem to create ample opportunity for people to have a place, right, in our networks. We have done immediate expansion at our food bank, namely because we've expanded a lot of our ways of sourcing food. I mentioned earlier the food rescue. One of the things that we have done under food rescue is we started a gleaning program.
So tell me more about the gleaning program.
The gleaning program's the newest addition to our food acquisition strategy, but essentially it's local farmers who are allowing us to go into their fields after they've picked the first kind of crop, and there's often good crop left behind that is absolutely edible. So now we have volunteers literally going into the fields with some of our own team members and picking up that food. So if you want to experience a day in the life of a farm worker, this is a way to do it. And we do it at 2 hour increments at a time. It's very demanding physical
not
labor,
something that most people can do all day.
It's very demanding. But you know what? It's been a very successful program, and I have seen a repetition of volunteers signing up for that. So there's something about working in nature, working in the fields, and actually picking the crop and then packing it for our community distribution that is speaking to people.
So I wonder about this, because if I were a community member and I'm like, I want to help in some way, often you think first of, how do I volunteer or donate? But if you're thinking about volunteering right now, there's an increased need for some folks to get those 20 hours a week. So should they stay away from volunteering so that there are more slots? Okay.
We need you. If anything, the onus is on our food bank to make sure we don't turn any volunteer away. And we need the volunteers to actually support us operationally every day. And we have a concerted effort to make sure that any CalFresh recipient that comes to us, we're going to find a place for them. Because we're equally committed, if not more committed, to making sure that we're helping CalFresh recipients stay on benefits. It's important to note, as you stated earlier, that CalFresh, or SNAP, has always been the first line of defense against food insecurity. In our county, it contributes $77 million, right, of nourishment a year into our local economy and into our stores.
So that's just money people get that they can spend on necessities, but it's money circulating in our economy. Okay.
And across the nation, this program has always been the best vehicle and the first vehicle for people to ensure some level of nourishment security. So if $77 million in our small county is what comes in of federal SNAP benefits that is then used in our local stores, what happens if that volume is reduced? What happens to the local economy, to those stores? What happened to the employees in those stores, right? So it has a ripple effect. If you think about nourishment as the fuel for a person's body, because that's what it is. And if a child doesn't have enough, what's happening in their educational outcomes? What's happening to their health outcomes, right? And then you think about a parent and you think about their level of stress. And if you think about what this means if they are not able to put food on the table, and that is impacting their mental health. What is that doing to their parenting?
You mentioned that you have CalFresh trained folks on staff. So people often come to the food bank. Maybe it's a more trusted resource than a county official. Talk to them about their situation and get advice. And when I spoke with the county, they were like, that is wonderful. At the end of the day, they do need to come talk to us to get their benefits. And I wanted to bring that up because the folks I spoke to at the county are optimistic that even though these work requirements are changing, there are exemptions, and those exemptions are important. And this is what Jim Dale at the Santa Cruz County Human Services Department told me.
20 hours a week is a significant volunteer commitment. Let's not confuse this for like we're going to volunteer our way out of it. Let's see the nuance in the regulations and realize there's actually exemptions in there that are perfectly reasonable based on the person's situation. Let's start there, right? And then for those that remain, let's make sure that they have a really good avenue to go volunteer.
So basically saying your first line of defense in navigating this new system is seeing if you have an exemption. And many people who already collect food assistance from the county or from the CalFresh might have those exemptions.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Where I think the value is with us is that we can almost help with setting the tone and the level of confidence, right?
Yeah.
In that process. So that their first interface isn't the county. Their first interface is a trusted community partner, right? And that we're hand-holding them to that process. Right. We do have in our county clarity of what that volume is of people that would be subject to the new rules. And it's, from the last I heard, between 6,000 and 7,000 people of the 44,000 people that still will need to abide by some level of work requirements criteria.
Yeah, right. So because of these changes now, those people will need to find some way to make their 20 hours a week.
So in our hearts and in our minds, like those are the volunteers that are going to need a place. Yeah. Right. These are the people that are going to need to figure out how to qualify or check off that 20-hour a week requirement.
And I don't want to lose sight of the fact that a lot of people, there will be individual families and individual people who are really, really severely impacted by these changes. But it sounds like there is some room for optimism.
No, I don't want to underestimate the impacts of HR 1, okay? Because they're real, as you stated earlier, largest cuts ever in the history of this program, a program that we know has worked, right? But I also believe that food banks have, in my case, 54-year history. It's the oldest food bank in California that has gone through things like earthquakes and recessions and depressions. And we have persevered. We can't lose sight of hope. And we have to activate to make sure that the community understands that there is people like you, me, and others that may be watching or listening that are interested in their well-being. We're going to need all of our neighbors to get involved with their respective food banks. So if you're listening in Monterey, I'm going to say we have a food bank in Monterey County. If you're listening elsewhere, watching elsewhere, there's likely a food bank in your region. Get connected and be engaged.
What's the best way for people to reach out and help? What's the best way to help?
Yeah, our website, thefoodbank.org, can show you all the ways that you can engage. We have a calendar that is updated on a regular basis with all the volunteer opportunities. If you want to donate some money so that I can use that money to buy the food that I mentioned earlier, you can do that online. If you want to glean, there's a telephone number you can reach out to us and we will walk you through the process. Soon you will hear that if you're growing apples in your backyard, lemons or avocados, we're going to start taking that product in too. And you'll be hearing from us soon around that. So you can come and pick up a bin and bring the bin back after you've picked your avocados and your lemons. That's another way that you can help. So there's ample ways, but I would encourage you to go onto our website. And of course, feel free to call us. If there's something I said that you're motivated about and want to continue talking to me, I make my cell phone number very public. Feel free to do that, and I'm happy to engage with you too.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Erica Padilla Chavez, thank you so much for dropping by the KZU Green Room. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Oh, it's been a pleasure.
Thanks.
Thank you.